Welcome to the Nerdy Multiverse. House of the Dragon is back with the 7th episode of the series, and this episode has a lot going on in it that has to be talked about. So let's break it down and give our thoughts on the new episode titled Driftmark. Before we get started with this episode though, we want to give you all a spoiler warning as we break down this episode. There will be a ton of spoilers, whether it's for this episode itself, the original Game of Thrones show, the source material, or our predictions possibly coming true in the future. Now that all of that stuff is out of the way, let's get started with the episode. This episode, being titled Driftmark, resembles how the entirety of the episode itself is taking place in Driftmark, the kingdom ruled by Corlys Velaryon. As we start this episode off, right after the events of the last, we head into what is quite a long sequence where everyone is gathered for the funeral of Elena, who of course died in the previous episode. Lena's coffin having the seahorse sigil on it being the house's sigil, and the coffin being sent into the water of the sea. Much like how Targaryens would get their burials with dragon flame, the Velaryons coincides with how their house works and their connection with the sea, as they have their burials at sea and their coffins thrown into the waters. During the funeral sequence, there are a lot of different things going on, like how Daemon is already beginning to eye Rhaenyra even before Lena's coffin was put in the sea. Otto eyeing the hand of the king's pin that is once again in his possession, meaning that he has been brought back to be the hand after Leonor'S death in the previous episode. We see that all of the dragons are in attendance here as well, as this comes into play with Vhagar later on in the episode. There is definitely a lot of tension going around at this funeral, as Rhaenyra and her sons are constantly being looked at by the Queen and Sir Criston. We see Helena once again playing around and observing different insects, and we hear her brothers talking about marriage and how Aegon will go on to marry his sister and that she will be his queen. Aegon clearly has no care in the world for this as he keeps on drinking and drinking, but you can tell that Aemon does seem to care as he tells him that it will keep their Targaryen blood strong. Larys Strong is at the funeral as well, and he looks at the Queen and nods at her. This is representing the length that he went to serve her and him showing his loyalty to her and her cause, but also trying to gain her attention. Lord Corlys tells Jacaerys that he will take the throne over Driftmark and Stepstones when it is time, and his brother will someday be the king on the Iron Throne. As Aemon stands at the fire, he hears the cries and roars of Vhagar as the sunset begins. Leonor stands in the water crying, and Corlys tells Sir Carl to go get him, and you could say that this sort of foreshadows what these two end up doing together at the end of the episode. It has been many years since Viserys has seen his brother or even spoken to his brother Daemon, ever since he exiled him for what he did and said about Rhaenyra. So Viserys tries to go up to him and make peace, trying to offer him to come back to King's Landing and that he could even have a seat on the council if he so wishes. All to no avail though, because Daemon just declines and walks away. But before he says he doesn't need anything, you can sort of see that he is about to say that he needs Rhaenyra. Daemon ends up running into Otto Hightower, who tries to give him his condolences, but Daemon says that no matter how fat the leech grows, it always looks for another meal, meaning that Daemon knows exactly what Otto is up to and how much he would do to gain power in the realm. Viserys heads off to bed, as do the children, but when he goes to bed, he says goodnight to Alicent but calls her Aemma instead, Aemma being his first wife and the one that died while giving birth in the first episode. This is definitely showing his decline in health. Aegon, obviously drunk, sitting on the steps, has to be kicked up and escorted to bed by Otto, as Aemon stands there and hears Vhagar's roars again and decides to leave to go seek the dragon out. Corlys and Rhaenys speak of how Rhaenys was meant to be queen and how much Corlys still has the pursuit to gain the throne for someone in his family, and how they both know that Rhaenyra's children are not of their own blood. Rhaenys wishes to pass Driftmark's ownership to go down to Laena's daughter Baela instead of Jacaerys, as Baela is true Velaryon blood. Daemon and Rhaenyra walk through the sands talking about marriage and her being heir to the throne, throne, where they end up getting together again. Aemon sneaks around and does find Vhagar asleep, where he approaches the dragon and tries to mount it. Vhagar does wake up and is about to burn the child, who stops him by speaking in High Valyrian, commanding the dragon and forming his lifelong bond with it after Laena's death, ultimately stealing the dragon from under everyone's noses there, a dragon that was meant to go to Laena's daughter, but now has formed its loyalty and bond to Aemond. This makes a lot more sense than what I was initially thinking was going to happen at first last week, especially knowing that Aemond is the one that rode Vhagar in the books. Baela and Rhaena notice that someone stole the dragon, so they wake up both of Rhaenyra's sons, where they end up finding out and confronting Aemond for what he has done. And if you remember from last week, when Aemond was speaking to Alicent about how he will eventually get his own dragon, and how Helena said that he will have to close an eye right after, this all comes into play in this episode. As the children all go into a brawl, Aemond is about to kill the two boys with a rock, but he ends up losing his eye after Jacaerys slashes him. Very reminiscent of what happened in the books. This all causes a huge ordeal, of course, and this is where the kids play a huge he said, she said sort of game, and Aemon obviously lying about what happened the entire time. The king is told that Aemon called the two boys bastards, which is considered very high treason, so he questions Aemon, and you can see he looks at his mother, which is where he truthfully heard them from, but he decides to blame it on his brother Aegon. And when confronted about it, Aegon just tells the king how it is and tells him that he knows and everybody knows that those two boys are bastards and not true Targaryens. Alicent demands that there must be payment for Aemon losing an eye, and how one of Rhaenyra's sons must lose an eye for an eye, ordering Sir Criston to take the eye, but the king refuses to allow this and tells them to make their apologies, yelling at everybody in attendance. Alicent ends up taking his Valyrian steel dagger from his belt and tries to go in to take the eye herself, but Rhaenyra stops her, saying to her that now everybody knows what she is truly like. Rhaenyra lets her arms go, and she ends up getting cut by the dagger on the arm, which you could say is treason, assaulting the very heir to the Iron Throne. But the entire ordeal ends after Aemon walks in and says to not mourn the loss of his eye, as with his eye being taken, he took one of their dragons. Different families and houses standing on different sides of the room, and this could very well represent who everyone is going to show their allegiance to in the future as the conflict continues to take off. After returning to King's Landing, Otto visits his daughter after the incident, where she tries to apologize for her actions and how she just let herself go. But just like Daemon said to Otto earlier, Otto takes this as an opportunity and a grab for power, and now they have a dragon on their side, and Vhagar being the largest dragon in the world. We cut to Rhaenyra getting her arm fixed up as Laenor comes in to check up on them, as he was nowhere to be found during the entire incident. The two speak about their marriage and how they spoke of how they will go on with their duties and freedoms during the marriage. Laenor says that he will do better and be there for the kids and for her and actually be a husband. But this is not what Rhaenyra wants, nor what Laenor truly wants, as he wants to go to the sea and fight in more battles, and she wants to marry Daemon. Larys Strong goes to speak with the queen and tells her if she needs an eye taken, he is her servant. But she tells him that she does not need it now, but may need his services sometime down the line, as now Alicent is solidifying her connections and playing the Game of Thrones herself. A plan is set in order by Daemon and Rhaenyra to get rid of Laenor so that they can marry each other, where they hire Sir Carl to do so, but we later learn that this was all a plan to fake Leonor's death. As after Corlys and Rhaenys find a burnt body whom they think is their son, we cut to see Daemon and Rhaenyra getting married, and when Rhaenyra spoke of the two getting married, she mentioned how they could be like Aegon the Conqueror, who ended up marrying his sisters to strengthen their house and their Targaryen bloodline. The episode ending off after we see Sir Carl waiting on a boat as Laenor in a cloak sneaks off to the boat with a shaven head to hide his notorious white white hair, and they leave Driftmark. This being very different from the books, as Sir Carl actually was the one that killed Leonor in the books after getting jealous that he fell in love with another man. But I like how Leonor is given the chance to get away and live his own life. This being the 7th episode, and this was yet another amazing episode that really played into a lot of the conflicts between all of the different people and houses who are pulling strings to gain more power in the realm. The conflict is definitely just going to pick up from here, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the next few episodes before the end of the first season. I definitely do think that we will be seeing the death of Viserys very soon, and I believe Alicent and Otto may possibly keep it a secret that he fell even more ill and ended up dying in his sleep. Otherwise, I do believe that Otto may be the one that is responsible for Viserys' death, poisoning him and making it look like he just naturally died in his sleep due to his illness. As we do see in the promo for the next episode, Otto is on the throne, sitting in and speaking for the king, and we could possibly start seeing larger scale battles coming to the show as war is looming. This series has been an absolute blast so far, and I haven't disliked anything about it, but make sure to comment below your thoughts on the episode, and while you're at it, throw in some of your predictions on what may happen next in the series. With all of that being said, that about does it for this week's House of the Dragon episode. Thank you all for watching, and if you want more nerdy content just like this, make sure to sub to the channel with notifications on, and don't forget to give a like on the video if you enjoyed it. We will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.